Good morning. For those of you who have not been here before, my name is Christina and I live in southwestern Missouri. I am what is called an urban homesteader, and I grow a pretty extensive organic garden in my urban backyard. I do have chickens and I grow fruits as well as just seasonal foods like tomatoes, potatoes, onions, beans, and then wherever I can pick up free stuff around the community, I go ahead and gather that for dehydrating for my food pantry. I am not a prepper, as many people might think, but I do believe in being prepared. I have a background, I guess, in the Mormon church. I am not active, but through that, I learned a lot about processing and putting up food for long-term storage. And so through my channel, my hope is to teach others about how to safely store nutritious and healthy food for the long term. So if you missed yesterday's video, I had gone to a local church and picked up some of the Farmers to Families produce boxes. And then this morning we were gifted with 2 more. So we have an overabundance of fresh food that is going to make several meals for my family this week, but also it's going to fill up my dehydrators. So let's get started. So what I have done is divided the boxes into fresh veggies, basically my root vegetables, so I have the potatoes and onions, and then in the other room I put all the fruit, and we will get to that in a little bit. So in yesterday's video I went ahead and showed you that I was going to make cauliflower soup and use some of the vegetables in a potato hash and for salad. And when I was gifted the other 2 boxes this morning, in them were more zucchini, some carrots, more tomatoes, and bell peppers. So, and I've got an overabundance of tomatoes in my garden right now that I'll go ahead and use for that salad. So I think we're gonna process the tomatoes, the bell peppers, and a little bit of the cauliflower into the dehydrator. And then the potatoes we will eat fresh. So I'm not going to process any potatoes today, though you can dehydrate them, and I'll show you how to do that in a future video. But I am going to process probably a bag, maybe 2 bags of the onions. So let's get started. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and take the cauliflower out of the package that it comes in. And I'm going to start by cutting off this green part. We don't use that. I go ahead and I feed that to the chickens. Okay, so that will go either to the chickens or into my compost. Okay, then I take the rest of this and I just kind of drop it into my colander. I break it up a little bit so you can see into the crevices slightly. It doesn't have to be, you know, really small, but just enough so that if there's anything hiding in those crevices, you can go ahead and wash it out. Let me go get my dehydrator tray. All right, so for the cauliflower, I'm gonna go ahead and use my Nesco dehydrator, and it has these wonderful silicone pieces that you can put on the trays that keeps the small, you know, like the really small pieces of the vegetables from falling through. Otherwise, you know, they tend to fall through the cracks. So I have 3 of those silicone trays, or silicone covers, or whatever you want to call them. I don't think I'm going to need all 3, but let's just... Okay, so then I cut off any big pieces that we really don't want to eat. You know, of the stem. And as you're going along, especially foods like cauliflower, broccoli, cabbage, examine it, because sometimes you do get stuff that gets caught up in the inside of the fruit that does not get washed away, and you really do not want that to end up in your final product. Basically what I'm going for is the florets with as little of the stem as possible. So then I just start spreading it around on the silicone tray. And if you see some that are still kind of big and you want to break them up a little bit, now's the time to do so. Excuse me. I try not to have them touch each other too much. I try and have it a little bit loose, you know, loosely packed in. Then I get them loaded on the dehydrator. Okay, so I have the cauliflower on the dehydrator. Next I'm going to do the tomatoes. And I just try and make the slices as even as possible. I don't always succeed with that, but you know, and it really isn't gonna make that much of a difference, other than some might get done dehydrating than others, or the way that you use your dehydrated tomato might, you know, require it to be a specific texture. You know, if you're using them whole. Most of mine I grind up pretty small, and so I'm not too particular about how I do it. So I'm just going to put them directly on the tray this time. I don't need to put one of the silicone sleeves on it. And I'm not going to season these at all. Sometimes I'll put a little bit of sea salt on them. But I'm not going to. Well, my battery decided to go dead right at that moment, so I'm not sure where it stopped exactly. I just love having stainless steel countertops. It just makes everything so much nicer. Alright, so now I'm going to do some bell peppers. Okay, I think we'll dehydrate 3 of them and leave 2 of them for meals. Hey there, Kishi. You did this one my last video too. Yeah, you did it with my last video. They get a special wet food treat twice a day. And then their bowl always has dry food in it. But if they see me in the kitchen, then they think that means that it's time to get a special treat. And she's the runt of the litter and seems to be hungry far more than the others, but she eats a lot less. So small, frequent feedings. I don't worry too much about the seeds because as it dries, they'll just dry with it, and usually they can be, they fall down to the bottom, or you can just shake them off. And then I just cut them into strips. Sometimes I do the rings, but usually I just do strips because it's easy. I can get the consistent thickness that I want, and they dry really nice. I do the caps as well. Sometimes I'll even do the bottoms of them if it's really, you know, there's a lot of meat left on it. I don't worry too much if I have the interior membrane on it. It all has a flavor, and the way, again, I use it, it doesn't change our meals at all. fussing too much with the bell pepper, cutting out all those extra things. It just makes it go so much faster to get it ready for the dehydrator. I do the same thing if I'm cutting this to freeze for fajita mix, which I will do as well. I like to freeze them fresh and then just pull them out and lightly saute them for vegetarian fajitas. And I just cut them in strips just like this as well. Fun little pieces. And then I just spread them out on the tray. And I'm going to have to get another dehydrator going because the Nesco, I think, is full. Okay, let me go check. I did, so now I'm going to go to the round one. I get these at Aldi's. I can't remember how many I bought. 4 or 5 or 6 or something like that. I've given a couple of them away or lent them out. My mom has one right now up in Wisconsin for when we're up there and we're putting that food. And this is actually probably my go-to if I'm just doing a small batch of anything. I really, really like this dehydrator. I'm not really sure why I like it so much, but I do. Well, it's compact. It's fairly quiet. It does have temperature gauge on it. And it just dehydrates nice. Okay. So we have the bell peppers. And then last, I think I'm going to do some onions. Something to put the ends in because this will go in the compost. That I'm going to feed to the chickens, but I don't like to give them the onion ends. And if I'm dehydrating onions, I tend to really be liberal on peeling off the exterior skin. Like this one, it's kind of soft, and then I check that and see we've got a little bit of a bruised spot. It's very minute, so I'll just cut that off. But you don't want to end up with anything that can spoil it once it's, you know, done through the process. So these are for my Ambiano, the Aldi's dehydrator. It is wax paper that I have cut to fit the trays. I did poke holes through them. I have done this process or this method for many, many, many years. I have not spoiled any food yet. I know that there are some people that disagree with using this, so I'm not recommending one way or another. I'm just showing you what works for me, and I've not had any issues yet. Now, the trays themselves, you know, the holes will work mostly like if I'm doing a slice of onion and I lay it down. But when I start doing the chunks like this, they can dry and fall through the holes, and so I like to use the wax paper. I save this and reuse it, and I have it for specific pieces or for specific foods. So like if I'm doing blueberries, you know, I'll use a specific one. For the onions or bell peppers, jalapenos, you know, if I have smaller chunks, I will use specific sheets. And then when I store them, you know, I remember what's what, and then replace as needed. Those are sticking together. No, you do not have to separate your pieces. You can put them in whole. They do take a little bit longer to dehydrate. But they, you know, and you can still break them apart at the end. Oh, it works just fine. I'll end up dehydrating more onion, but just for the purpose of this, well, you know what? I'm going to do a zucchini because that's a good companion in the dehydrator. So let me, this is a good one. Let's get this prepped. I do not peel them. I just cut off both ends, and I either quarter or slice. And so for this, if we're just doing a tray, I will slice. And just like with the tomatoes, I try and keep the slices fairly consistent. And usually I use smaller zucchini, so I have nice small rounds when it's done. And I will show you. These are fairly large. They will shrink down in size a little bit, but not significantly. So let me show you. So this is zucchini that I did a few weeks ago. So you can see this isn't going to shrink down that much. These were already fairly small to start with. They were more on par with this, or even a little bit smaller. Alright, so I'll get these loaded and grab another tray. Alright, this is the dehydrator that I got at Harbor Freight. And it doesn't hold up so well. These are cheap plastic. They tend to melt very easily. But I've had this for about 7, 8, let's see. I think this one's about 8 years old. And so, you know, I guess I'm getting my use out of it. I paid about $30 for it. Now, those other trays, I'm going to put some fruit. strawberries, I just take the caps off and then I slice them. So about half of the container was good. This was part of that food box that we got. And then I just slice them. Now my kids love strawberries, and so do my grandkids. Whenever I go up to Wisconsin, I used to take along a jar of dehydrated strawberries, but then I couldn't keep up on their demand for them. Alright, and then I think I'll do a few of these Jonathan apples. What do I have? 2 trays left? 1 tray left. So 2 I think will fit. Possibly 3. Let's see. Let's see how far we get. I'm not going to get the apple core out. I'm just going to do this fast. I keep the peel on. I don't do lemon juice or anything. I just stem or core them and then slice them so that each side has an interior fruit piece exposed. And doing it this way, I do realize that there is a little bit of waste. And I don't like wasting stuff, but, well, technically it's not wasted because it gets fed to the chickens or it goes into the compost, so it's feeding the garden. And I used to be a lot more diligent about not having any waste on anything, but you can only spend so much time doing stuff that should be spent on other things. Oh, I did have 2 trays. Oh. Okay, so we'll do some more apples. Now, dehydrated apples can be eaten just as they are. It can be an acquired texture and taste. A lot of people do not like them, but they reconstitute fairly well. So you can chop up the pieces and put it in like oatmeal or cereal, you know, anything that's going to require like some sort of heat to it. Or you can grind it up and use it as a seasoning, again, back into anything that you would put apples in. We have a dish where we and I don't use real meat, so it's vegetarian, plant-based sausage and potatoes, onions, bell peppers, and apples. And it's fried all together, and then we usually eat it with a little bit of hot mustard, and it's really tasty. The recipe that you would traditionally use kielbasa, but because we don't eat meat anymore, or we, you know, rarely eat meat, and especially not processed stuff like that. We have found an alternative with, I think it's Field Roast brand apple sausage. But anyways, the dehydrated apple, you just soak them in some hot water, and then you can throw the water and apples, because it absorbs quite a bit of the water, but you can throw them both in with the onions and peppers when they're sauteing, because I don't like to saute with oil either. I saute with water, or I mostly do. You will see me use oil, but I'm not a big fan of using it for food or for cooking. But anyways, it works really well, and it's tasty. And so if we don't have fresh apples, or we're just trying to use up some of our dehydrated pantry, that's one way that we will use these dehydrated apples in an actual like meal that's not just a snack or a breakfast. Not that breakfast isn't a meal, but you know what I mean. Alright, now this tray is done too. So I'm going to go put this on, and then I'll bring the camera out there and show you the setup. Alright, so out here in the living room, on my dining room table, I have 5 dehydrators set up right now. And I will do a review of the dehydrators at some point and show you why I have so many and my thoughts on them. But I have the Nesco here, and this is kind of nice. This is the body of it, and then all the rest of that is just trays. So this is where the air comes out of, is right here, and you just stack your trays and put that on. This is the Ambiano, which is from Aldi's, and it's just like your traditional round stacked tray. You have different settings. I have it on high, and then you have your on-off button. This is the one that I got from Harbor Freight, and I actually have a couple of them, but the others I use for the placentas, and they are different colors, so they're kept separate. So I'll talk about that on a different video. But there's no on or off button. There's no controls. You just stack your trays and plug it in. You do have, you know, where you can adjust this for airflow, and so I just have it set to come out the vents, not the big holes. And that works well for what I have in it. That'll take about 18 or so hours to completely finish this stuff out. This, depending on the thickness, could be done in about 12 to 16 hours. This is my Vintage Waring brand back here, and that's the cover, and then you have the trays. This one also does not have any on-off switch or anything. You just load it and plug it in. But I like it. It works really well. It's quiet, unlike some of these others. This has a fairly decent hum, and the Excalibur has a fairly decent hum. The others are fairly quiet. So, and then I have the Excalibur, and I am finishing up apples and blueberries. We have some tomatoes, which should be just about done. Cherry tomatoes, which should be done. These are nectarines. More nectarines. Are they the apples or the nectarines? These are the apples. More apples. And more apples. And this one is just about finished. Everyone, thank you for joining me today as I showed how I do some of my dehydrating and talked a little bit about my dehydrators. If you have not already subscribed, please hit the button below and give me a thumbs up if you like this video. As always, I welcome comments and suggestions in the comments section below. In the description bar of this video, I will go ahead and put down the description of the different dehydrators that I have and what I put in the dehydrators today. I will do a follow-up video on how I store them and label the jars, so look for that. Have a wonderful Saturday. Thanks again. Bye, everyone.